Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, February 22nd, 2019. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody has had an awesome 2 weeks since we've been able to do this live. Unfortunately, we had some circumstances happen last week where we just weren't able to get together. Namely, I had some crap. I think Alex had some crap too. So we just said, you know what? Skip this week. We'll move on to the next one. And there you go. So I hope everybody's had a nice 2 weeks, not necessarily 1 week. I hope everybody's still doing good, had a nice Valentine's Day and all that. Of course, I also hope the best of this with my panelists, also fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow wise men in their own right, fellow awesome guys in general. If you guys aren't following their content, what the heck is wrong with you? You should be, damn it. And I'll go ahead and start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash. The list can continue to go on. Basically what happens, I would like to explain to everybody, is when he snaps his fingers, magic happens. Stephen Romney, how you doing?
I wish it was as simple as snapping my fingers, but usually by snapping fingers, it's usually hours upon hours of staring at a screen until my eyes bleed.
So basically what we all do.
Pretty much.
It's a lot nicer to just say we snap our fingers and magic happens.
Yeah, it's just pretty much I just have the tendency to take things to the nth degree.
I'd also like to point out that he is the Geek News representative for the Zombie Anti-Defamation League. You just recently got appointed that. I hope you're liking the role so far.
Well, they've got me on retainer. The pay is not great, but it's a nice thing to add to the resume.
After all, zombies have feelings too. And also, we do have Alex the Shadow Blazer joining us from outside of the shadows, but just barely. He holds borderline territory as he discusses the week's events in Geek. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing well. I'm kind of late because I was wrapping up Disc 1 of Season 2. Basically, I've been watching more anime. I've been watching Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions. I just finished the first season a few days ago, and I've just started into the second season and been really enjoying that.
Alex has been watching anime, hashtag head exploded.
Stand on your head if you did not see that coming.
All right. So happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. And we actually have a lot to unpack here. But I think it's only appropriate that our top story this evening is that we acknowledge our new Lord, Savior, Overlord, Master, and all things above, Bowser. Bow your head. Bow your head, everybody. Bow your head. Yes, tonight we're going to be talking Nintendo talk for the first time ever on the podcast, but this is pretty much a big top story for geeks everywhere, and it literally broke yesterday, I believe, where Reggie Fils-Aimé put up a very subtle video up on the various sites, including Nintendo.com, I think had it too, where he announced his official retirement as president of Nintendo of America. And so at that point, you have a huge legacy that is now since basically going off to do his own thing. Oh my gosh, 15 notable years as the president of Nintendo of America. And in those 15 years, so many memes, just so many memes, people, so many. Alex brought up the puppet. I personally think the Reggie Fils-Aimé was better, but that's me. And of course, we can't not mention this without going, my body is ready. So I guess my question is, are you all ready? Or is your body ready for the acknowledgement of our new Lord and Savior, the new president of Nintendo America, Doug Bowser?
Not sure I'm ready to traverse various seas of lava and fire to get to Mr. Bowser's office, but we'll see.
I want everybody to report Alex to Doug Bowser immediately. He does not like lava. He is officially anti-lava.
Well, then you've also got to worry about the issue of you go to the office and then you just have the toadstool saying, sorry, our boss is in another office.
And the problem is... Well, we must oppress the Mushroom Kingdom, Romney. That is our cause now.
Well, yeah, but you'd think it'd be a bit more logistical. I understand moving the princess from castle to castle, but just moving your own office from office to office, and I don't know. I mean, you can only do that so many times, and even if you know where the ways to skip the offices are, they're not always accessible. I mean, we can't all jump beyond the warp pipe and go beyond the screen. We can't all find this special power
But you
block
refuse,
that
Romney,
gets the
to
mines up
acknowledge
into
the
sky.
power of the Koopa Troopas. The Koopa Troopas, they know how to move shit. They know how to move shit and quick.
Yeah, problem is, ever since they unionized, well, they've become a bit more cantankerous.
You're right. There has been a lot more increased production of green Koopa Troopas as opposed to red Koopa Troopas. There's a bit of a problem there.
Well, and they've had to rewrite the insurance policy, so now the paratroopers, getting the wings added is now considered a luxury item. You can no longer have it covered by your HMO. It's ridiculous.
If people can't tell that we're being smartasses right now, not only did Reggie Fils-Aimé announce his retirement, he also announced his replacement. The new president of Nintendo of America is going to be, and I'm not even kidding, so many people have been asking online, is this a joke? It is not. His name is Doug Bowser. But it's okay. He rose to the occasion because if you guys saw his official announcement on Twitter, well, he took care of business. He took care of damn business. As you can see off in the corner on his bookshelf, Mario and Luigi are promptly tied up. Did you guys see that picture? I thought it was the greatest thing about the announcement.
Yeah, I mean...
aside from waiting 6 months, because you know it's going to take about 6 months for somebody to actually put him in the Bowser body and then put that picture up there, that's going to be really awesome. But before people jump down the throats of like, this is just a joke pic and we're going to find out whoever it is too, very soon, this guy has actually got quite a bit of a record in the gaming industry, not just Nintendo. I'm looking for the stuff in the article right off the bat. But we're talking about a veteran of the video game industry for, I think, up to 15 years as of right now. He's a fairly recent addition to Nintendo, but he's an industry veteran who joined Nintendo of America in May of 2015. So he really only has about coming up on 4 years with the company. However, he's worked with other companies. He's been able to work in the industry for quite a bit of time. Yep, so we're talking a lot of experience, not just in business, but also in the gaming industry.
Yep. Looking at this, his previous resume includes being an executive over at, well, the company that must not be named except for now, Electronic Arts, as well as being the most recently as the company's vice president of global business planning, and he also has worked at other companies like Procter & Gamble in territories in Asia and Latin America, as well as the United States. So we know that he's got experience dealing with other countries.
And before people jump down his throat immediately, oh my gosh, he worked with EA, run for cover! Remember, he still has to submit to the Nintendo overlords.
Yes.
There's only one person more powerful than Bowser, and that is Miyamoto.
Well, and Furukawa.
And Furukawa. They are more powerful than Bowser, for they get to tell Bowser which world he goes to.
Yeah, they're the ones who decide whether he gets the clown car or the pirate ship.
So I know we're knocking Doug Bowser quite a bit here, but it's just like we have to get this out right now. Like, we're going to be giggling about this for years, not just the following E3. We're going to be giggling about this for years. All right. So at that point, I'm just getting that out right here now. But let's cut to the meat at hand. Reggie's retiring. Like, this is 15 years. A 15-year career with Nintendo of America. Tons of references, tons of memes. He's probably been one of the better presidents that they actually could have picked to represent Nintendo of America, as, you know, he not only is kind of a gamer himself, but he also knows, unlike some people within Nintendo, like, I'm not gonna say Iwata had that problem, but his successor, his name is escaping, Kimishima, didn't necessarily want to go that route. And Furukawa, it's anybody's guess at this point, because he's only been in one Nintendo Direct at this point. We'll see what he does with like E3, but holy crap, this is a career that I'm actually just gonna say it. I'm gonna miss him. I really am. I looked forward to whatever new meme came out, whether it was negative towards him or positive, because the dude rolled with the damn punches.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even, okay, a lot of people don't realize this because we all make the "my body is ready" joke, but that was supposed to be like an insult to him, and he ran with it. He literally ran with it. He made that his tagline. If Hulk Hogan's tagline is "Let me tell you something, brother," his tagline was "My body is ready." Like every time that anybody would interview him and go, "Are you ready for this interview?" "My body is ready." That was always his reaction. So this guy is just, he knows. He not only knows business, he not only knows how to do what he does best, but he also knew when it was a good idea to pull back and when to roll with the damn punches. I mean, for crying out loud, even he, like when everybody hated the Nintendo puppets, but now everybody doesn't, like they all look at it ironically and love it. He was the one that was just saying like, well, yeah, they were kind of jokey, but that's kind of the point of it. This was a jokey kind of commercial. And how many things did he like? I'm trying to think of all the commercials that he was part of. The 3DS reveal, he was part of that whole CG trailer right along with Miyamoto and Iwata. They pretty much became like this trio.
Yeah,
so,
then there was also the reveal of the Mii fighters with the battle between Iwata and Reggie.
That's right. Was Miyamoto in that one too?
I'm not sure. I just remember
because I think Reggie was the brawler, Iwata was the shooter, and I think Miyamoto was the sword guy.
Probably. I just remember, well, the memes and the fan art that came out, especially considering all the JoJo references.
Well, I mean, for crying out loud, he's earned a spot on pretty much everybody's Wii. Like everybody made a Reggie avatar. Everybody did. I to this, I have one. I have one like on my old Wii, just because I wanted one. So at this point, like let's talk this. You guys kind of get my viewpoint. What are you guys' thoughts on the passing of really a great in Nintendo?
Well, I mean, it's not really a passing because he's not
but passing the torch, so to speak.
Yeah, again, poor choice of words there, but
yeah,
I mean, what can be said? He knew, he understood Nintendo's core audience. He understood that, hey, yeah, games can be fun. Let's kind of embrace that instead of trying to. Because again, a lot of people try to argue the games is art thing, and he kind of understood that, hey, we're all for it. That's not Nintendo's bag. We're just gonna kind of remain that fun, family-friendly company, and especially considering how some of the stuff he had to put up with, especially from the Mother 3 fans, and kind of how he's just like, yeah, and how frequently I get asked about Mother 3. And so it's the fact that he was able to put up with that, but maintain his composure and not really. The fact that he was able to kind of say like, "Hey, it's not really coming."
Well, I think he specifically requested. You remember you guys might remember when he did the E3 where, the guys who made Robot Chicken did the Nintendo Direct that time, and I think he intentionally asked for them to make a Mother 3 joke. And so in the middle of that, you go, "What do you think this is, Mother 3?" And it's like literally like he's got his model has got a little shit-eating grin on it. So
I don't think it was that. I remember what it was with that skit. It was just someone in the crowd's like, oh, we don't care about that. Give us Mother 3, and that's when he ate the fire flower and then burnt him.
There you go. That's what happened. But yeah, he intentionally asked for a Mother 3 reference because he'd heard about it so many times from people. I think even like when YouTube, like when he did the Reggie Fils-Aimé with Mega 64, they even asked him. He's like, I have nothing to say. And still, in my opinion, that's the best meme he ever did, was the Reggie Fils-Aimé. That was hilarious. I actually, as soon as I heard he retired, I went back and watched that because it was great. Alex, where are you standing on the retirement of Reggie Fils-Aimé?
Yeah, it's gonna be sad to see him go, but because he definitely was. He always, certainly as the business suits go, he definitely always seemed pretty chill and pretty willing to have fun with his job and with fans. And like you said, just roll with whatever came his way. He loved the memes that were spurred around him. So definitely be looking forward to seeing what Doug BOWSER brings to the industry now.
He didn't say his name right. He didn't say his name right. Paratroopers over there right now. I want a Lakitu over there right now to film it. I'm sorry. I need to make fun of this now.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what Doug BOWSER brings to Nintendo of America now, especially with this name being Bowser and everything.
I know a lot of people are looking at it negatively just because of part of Doug BOWSER's history being that he worked for Electronic Arts. How appropriate his name is Bowser. He worked for an overlord. But at this point, just because you worked at Electronic Arts doesn't necessarily mean you hold the values of Electronic Arts, is all I'm saying here. I'm not necessarily going to judge this guy because, well, he's not Bobby Kotick. He's not, crap, I can't remember the CEO of EA, Andy something. He's not them. We already know their track record. We don't know Doug's. And so at that point, I would just say to people who are already skeptical, calm down, chill the F out. Let's actually watch him. Let's actually see what he does.
Plus, it's probably more telling that he left EA and then came to Nintendo, which should probably tell you a lot.
Exactly. So, I mean, that could already tell you a lot about his character. The other thing that I'd also want to point out with Reggie is that I've seen a lot of people kind of saying this in retrospect of his career. You guys kind of mentioned it properly. For a guy in a suit, he was able to do so well on the E3 on the E3 floor, being able to explain like reveals like the Wii and everything like that. So much so that a lot of people, and myself included, I kind of agree with this. A lot of those other companies kind of took example from him and tried to present themselves more according to how he did it so that they could be a little bit more open and welcome. One example that I'm going to give, and Xbox fans are going to jump down my throat, is Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer, I remember seeing an old video of him showing up as the Xbox rep for the first time, and he was just bland. All right, I know one big complaint that Alex has with the Sony conference is that they usually get all numbers and stock and oriented and everything like that. Phil Spencer was more boring than that. But then suddenly, a couple of years later, after we had some of those Reggie memes, he started being a little bit more open. He started welcoming people into the Xbox convention, and I can't help but wonder, along with others, if he didn't take a note from Reggie and say, like, yeah, you need to loosen up. You need to actually have fun along with the fans.
Yeah, I mean, given the kind of I guess the trust they've built with the audience because of that openness, that's why Nintendo is still as strong a brand as it is. And it's something that we've seen companies kind of forget, and it came back to bite them. I mean, look at what happened with Konami. Konami used to be that way with some of their conferences, even if the language barrier was something they probably should have taken into consideration, as seen with the Bimani conference back of yesteryear. Yeah. But it's, again, when you kind of have that go-between, someone who kind of puts a face to the company that is willing to engage the fan base in a way that makes them excited about the product, people will remember that.
Exactly. Another thing that I'll also give credit to Reggie for is this is how I knew that he was the ideal rep and a lot more companies needed him or people like him was, I remember, so 2007 was like a really ambitious conference for Nintendo in E3. And 2008 had a lot of hype because of how well 2007's went. Because I believe, that was the Wii reveal, or like the final Wii reveal, and showing off some of the other games that were going to be coming for it. And so a lot of expectations were really high that following year. And I still remember to this day how boring and lame the Nintendo conference was in 2008. That was, just to give people a reference here, the biggest things that they had to announce were Punch-Out for the Wii, which was received fairly well. Animal Crossing, I think it was called City Folk. It was the Wii game. And Wii Music. And this was the year that everybody makes fun of. This was the live music demonstration where Miyamoto and 3 other schlubs came out and played Wii Music. All right. So there was a lot of negative walking out of that conference. And Reggie took it like a pro. He was interviewed by numerous people saying how much of a joke the Nintendo conference was. And he literally looked everybody in the eye like a good salesperson and said, well, occasionally you're going to have some bad years. And I'm trying to do my Reggie here. You're occasionally going to have some bad years. But all you need to do is make sure that the next year is just as even more hype elevated. And it's going to be just great with Nintendo. Like, he took it. He took the bad and made it into a good. And then at that point, he wowed everybody the next year of 2009. So it's one of those things that I'll always appreciate Reggie. And he, to me, is a one-of-a-kind representative in the gaming industry. Numerous company representatives, not just the console makers, AAA companies need to look at him and say, we need somebody like that. Do you want to know how I know that? Because Ubisoft tried to do it and failed.
Yeah, and Other companies tried to do it by hiring actors to do it, but it just wasn't the same. Because I know that there was
actors.
Well, some of them were like actual actors, because Sony tried creating their own like fake spokesperson for the PS4, or no, it was the PS3, I believe, and then it just kind of crashed and burned. Where after the actor just happened to be in a commercial that featured a Wii, things got kind of dicey. And yeah, but it just goes to show, yeah, you can hire actors for like, I mean, it may work for commercials, but it won't really work, on like in person. It's just not the same. You can't, like, you can't fake a Reggie.
You really can't. So without further, unfortunately, we need to move on to some other things, but I think we can all basically say we thank Reggie for the 15 years that he gave us. We thank him for giving us moments to laugh, cry, and laugh some more. I personally am going to miss the guy. But I think he's done a really great job. And so I look forward to seeing what he's going to do in the future. Although I have heard that it's more of a permanent retirement. So like he's going to go off into the sunset now. And you know what? Enjoy your round of golf. All right. But make sure it's Mario Golf.
Well, I mean, it could be Mario Golf, or it could just be the original NES Golf.
It could be that too. I mean, he does have a Nintendo Switch. Final thoughts on this one. Any final thoughts that you guys have for the retirement of Reggie Fils-Aimé?
Goodbye, Reggie. We're going to miss you, buddy.
Our body was not ready for your retirement.
But hey, fun fact, Doug Bowser's alma mater, University of Utah. So, hey.
Oh, really?
Local. Yeah.
So now even more, let's all bow and pay homage to our new overlord and savior, Doug Bowser. All right. So without further ado, there's a reason that I went super positive with this story, because A, it's hilarious and we need to get that out, because we're gonna have to talk seriously about Doug Bowser, later in the year and in years to come. But the other part is, unfortunately, a lot of the news that we have to cover the rest of the night is fairly down. So without further ado, let's get into the next story, which is our newest segment, YouTube Talk. And with YouTube Talk, we have a couple of updates to various systems and an asshole who basically made everything extra hard on YouTube now. So first things first, let's get into the minor update that happened earlier this week before all the insanity began. I think the insanity was beginning by that point. But we had a couple of adjustments that were going to be coming to the community guideline strike system. And I believe it was coming up, or it was going to be implemented February 25th. So it was literally going to be next week. But basically, it looked like they were actually going to not have so many steep punishments, at least in regards to their community guideline system. As if you actually got your first strike, the way you guys might have to clarify on this, I've never gotten a community guideline strike, so I don't know necessarily the penalties for it. I know the copyright penalties, but the way that I understand it is that it worked very similar to the copyright system. If you got a strike, then at that point you couldn't live stream, you couldn't put videos longer than 15 minutes up. And you basically had to wait for that strike to go down. In fact, the way I understand it, community guideline strikes were harder to remove than copyright strikes.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, one of the major changes that they are actually doing is your first strike. First of all, they're going a different direction with the penalties. Instead of just saying you're restricted, you can't do this. What they're doing instead is, if you get your first community guideline strike, I'm going to stop saying that because it's really long to say. You get your channel frozen for 1 week, and users won't be able to upload or stream any content to YouTube on that channel, and the strike will expire in 90 days. So for that 7 days, you can't upload jack, and you're being watched, kind of thing. If you got a second strike, the way I understand it, and if you guys are reading this differently, after the 90 days, if you have nothing, the strike falls off. And at that point, you're back to first strike. But after a second strike within the same 90-day period, it would result in a 2-week upload freeze. And then if you actually had a third strike within the 90-day period, same thing that would happen. 3 strikes, you're out. Shut down the channel, terminated, all content gone, kind of thing. But a lot of people were actually looking at this fairly positive because of the first strike, is that this was more of a slap on the wrist kind of deal to them than what was initially there in the first place.
Yeah. Plus, we kind of glossed over another key thing where if it's a first-time offense, you get off with a no penalty warning. So
Yes,
if
that's
you're hit, if you're hit once and it's the first time your channel's been hit with a strike, it's a case of, okay, we're going to let you off with a warning. This is why this strike was leveled against you. Don't do it again. And then after that, you then go through the strike phases.
I've even heard also, if you got that concept, you might get a few emails from YouTube just reminding you of this is how this works. This is how the community guidelines work. This is how copyright works, just in case you didn't know, kind of thing. But after that, then the strikes take place. You're frozen. You can't do anything with that channel for 7 days, 14 days, or ever. So with that being said, before we get into all the other crap that happened, your thoughts on the changes to the community guidelines strike system. Is it better? Is it worse?
Well, I mean, at least it's nice that they're actually outlining an actual procedure, because prior to this, we didn't even really know what they did with community guideline strikes. It kind of got overshadowed by, well, the copyright system. And so at least here now, there's at least some sort of definition of at least what the process is. Whether or not they'll actually enforce their own guidelines unilaterally remains to be seen.
Agreed. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with Romney on this. To be honest, I still don't know a whole lot about the community guidelines strike because I've never gotten one before. And according to the article, it seems very, very few do. It's like 98% of YouTubers never receive them. So I guess that's why they're just not as well known. But it is nice to have something
we've
a bit
only
more...
we've only heard an upsurge of them in the last few months, haven't we?
Well, I haven't really heard of an upsurge of the actual strikes, but I have heard an upsurge in people pointing out channels that have violated community guidelines that YouTube refuses to do anything about.
Because I don't remember hearing about community guideline strikes until probably 3 years doing YouTube. And then I heard my first ever, and I'm like, oh wait, there are different strikes aside from copyright? And even then it was vague on how you got them.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's nice to have a bit more clarity on the matter and just know what to expect. So there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was great. It's just unfortunate that a proverbial wrecking ball was then thrown into YouTube. I want to say a day or two after, as I'm probably going to murder the guy's name, but I believe it's Matt Walsh, put up his hashtag of, oh crap, what is it? YouTube.
Wake up YouTube.
Yeah, thank you. Wake up YouTube, where he criticized the YouTube platform for stuff that we kind of already knew about. If people remember when we covered the whole, I think it's been dubbed now, Elsagate situation, where YouTube Kids and a bunch of kids-friendly channels, or at least they were considered kids-friendly, were putting up a lot of really questionable material, in particular putting Elsa, Spider-Man, all these people in really innocuous poses, having them murder each other. I didn't even know about this when we covered it, but apparently there's a cartoon about Mickey throwing a bottle, or like a beer bottle, at a baby and it breaking. And he's like, yeah, it was pretty nuts. And we knew that YouTube was working on it. We knew that YouTube was aware of it. We knew a lot of those channels were going away, things like that. In fact, a lot of people blame that being is that the first adpocalypse, or was there one before that?
I think the first adpocalypse has been like attributed to PewDiePie, hasn't it? More or less.
Oh yeah, yes, because PewDiePie and the N-word.
Well, yeah. Plus, the adpocalypse was kind of what jump-started YouTube to actually start doing something about that.
Yeah.
Because there was the PewDiePie with the N-word thing. Not even the N-word thing. It was the Fiverr incident where he hired the two guys.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because that happened before then.
Yeah, and so that was kind of what jump-started YouTube to, start getting their crap together. And a lot of people forget, oh, the adpocalypse was one big event, but if you remember, that was a thing that lasted like a good couple of months. It wasn't just one big event. There was just a whole bunch of things of people getting demonetized, and it was just this domino effect that we were having to deal with for a while until some other big controversy distracted us from all of it.
So we knew that YouTube was aware of it, but unfortunately, YouTube could only do so much, and there were other things that they hadn't necessarily caught, which is what the whole Wake Up YouTube video tried to highlight, is that you had a bunch of kids channels kids channels run by parents, kid channels run by kids, where you would then have them put in innocuous poses. The one in particular that people brought to my attention was a little girl in a bikini who decided to go like into weird poses and had some really nasty comments in there that probably from legit pedophiles. And that was kind of the premise of his attack on YouTube. And he was basically going on his full-on, scorched earth campaign to just get rid of YouTube and in turn target the advertisers of YouTube, so that then YouTube would then be harmed and lose funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is when YouTubers stepped in and basically said, yes, this process is actually being worked on. Philip DeFranco, Keemstar, amongst many others, tried to bring to his attention that this is being worked on. And we can confirm it. We've talked to our YouTube contacts. We know that they're working on it. And this guy was not willing enough to relent. He didn't think it was enough. He thought his cause was just and righteous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So much so that we actually have 4 major brands actually terminate their advertisement contracts with YouTube. Remember back in the Elsa Gate one, you had big ones like Nestle. I think it was... It was Mars. It was Mars that pulled out, and now it's Nestle. I also know Nike happened in that previous one too, but now you have advertisers like Disney, Nestle. The other ones are escaping me.
Well, let's clarify a couple things, at least in the article we're going off of, which comes to us from Metro. The advertisers mentioned in this article are Nestle and Epic Games, the creators of
Games,
Fortnite.
yeah.
And the thing is that they haven't necessarily pulled all advertising. The official statement is that they are pausing all current campaigns, meaning that they're saying, okay, we're going to stop putting ads on you for a while until you sort this stuff out, YouTube. And so it's very much a case where it's not completely severed. It's just a case of, we're going to, pull back until we can actually trust that this has been fixed.
So you can imagine that the YouTubers that were trying to dissuade this guy are now considerably perturbed at him. So much so that they decided to do their own background check. And, well, it now looks like he's basically a small YouTuber that got shunned, and now he's looking to scorched earth the platform because he couldn't be famous. This is their words, not mine. I've seen some of the creepy videos that he had up there on his channel from them actually investigating it. It does look like he's a little jilted, but I mean, at the same time, I also understand kind of the cause that he wants to do, but that's neither here nor there. So you have that issue there. And now, as of last night, after we saw that a bunch of those channels once again got banned and comments were deleted and everything like that, YouTube basically went into panic mode and tried to take care of as much of it as possible. It just so happens that they actually started targeting channels and groups that weren't necessarily part of that problem, but they were targeted simply because they had content like that, and YouTube wanted to try and get rid of that stuff. Specifically, the one that people like to bring up is a mom who put up on Twitter that her son was doing gymnastics, and he did a bunch of gymnastics videos on there, and YouTube put the kibosh on that. Basically said it was not advertiser friendly, can't be monetized, can't do anything with it. She then lashed out at YouTube and said, what the hell? To which we got the following comment from YouTube, basically saying that not only are we looking at the video content itself, but also if you have nasty comments on there too, those will probably get you demonetized as well. Philip DeFranco has since bounced that back and said, I've talked to a few people that may not necessarily be what they mean, although others are very skeptical as to whether or not that's going to hold water. I can kind of see their viewpoint. YouTube doesn't have a whole lot of trust from the users, even the ones with contacts. So with that being said, now that I've gotten everything out of the way, let's discuss the heck out of this. YouTube has been kind of a minefield this past week. What are you guys' thoughts?
Again, it's just... I said it in our live chat. It's like, we've probably had like 20 adpocalypses at this point.
We really have.
There's always this flux, especially anytime a new controversy erupts, whether it's like it's alt-right channels, it's conspiracy channels, it's It's
I think
now
Alex Mauer
pedophilic.
was considered an adpocalypse.
Probably. It's like there's always a controversy and there's always the blowback, and then it just kind of fizzles out and things just kind of simmer as things kind of get settled. Right now, okay, well, all we can do is wait, really, because it's like DeFranco has reported on. Right now, YouTube's stance is that this is mostly going to affect and apply to channels that actually feature minors in their videos, where the comments could potentially lead to demonetization. And will that start stretching out? Probably, maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. So I think, well, one simple solution is don't monetize your damn children, for one, parents, but I guess that's your business. And
but wait, there's that one kid who earned like 6 figures last year.
True, there is that kid with the big toy channel, so that's a whole nother matter, I guess. I mean, there's a few options to kind of mitigate this, especially if you do feature children primarily as your channel. If you want to be that family entertainment channel and talk about family and children's, then, I don't know, put on the comments that set for approval rather than just approve all comments. Maybe tighten up your approval filter. Every so often I go into my comment filter, which every YouTuber can do this, is you go into your settings and there's a little say, okay, here's a list of like blacklisted words, right? I mean, there is, as intimidating as it sounds that the mere comments can disable your channel, there are some steps you can do to potentially mitigate this problem, especially if you are a family-oriented channel.
Let me ask this of you really quick. So a lot of the bigger YouTubers are basically doomsayers when it comes to this whole subject. Now that a lot of them have made those videos, do you agree with their stance that basically the way everybody's going to approach this is just bottom line, turn off comment section and not have to worry about it?
Potentially. Again, I think everybody's going to wait. I mean, there's going to be those people who have that knee-jerk reaction and just shut off the comment section for a while.
I'll admit I did. I had that initially.
But I think there's still going to be the other people that are saying, well, let's see where the cards fall on this one. And if it does start to become a problem, then they probably will start disabling comments. Again, I don't think that's necessary. You can just set comments to moderated approval, and that way you can filter specifically what comments come through. It's pretty simple.
Yep. Romney, your take on this whole thing.
Well,
I'm also going to level the same question to you. Do you think it's going to be wise what a lot of the bigger channels are just saying, just turn off your comment section, just don't worry about it?
Honestly, I think if YouTube actually wants to address this, they need to get past one thing. You can't rely on automation. That is the fundamental problem when YouTube is trying to deal with crises like these, is that they're constantly trying to rely on automated systems to do their policing for them.
Wait, I'm feeling a sense of deja vu. It's almost like we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm. And looking at this, okay, this may get a bit graphic here, but when it comes to the way a website tries to search out to try to kind of curb stomp sources of child pornography or any related links, people often try to use different tags, different euphemisms to try to mask it. And what you can do is that you can try coding those into some sort of a program and then take down a bunch of videos that happen to have the same combination of letters. Problem is that can cause a lot of problems. I mean, the most common acronym people often see used is CP, which pretty straightforward. Problem is, if you try to code that into a case of, okay, this is now a banned term on this website. Well, say someone is doing a video that's discussing cerebral palsy, which is also initialized as CP.
Or I find it funny that you're bringing this up because this actually happened. So a bunch of channels got banned because they had CP on it, which immediately they assumed was child porn because a lot of other channels did that. But then you banned a bunch of Pokemon Go channels because CP also means combat points.
And also a bunch of channels that were discussing Club Penguin. And you see the problem. If you try to automate it, but you don't actually, have an actual person going in and making sure that the code is doing what it's supposed to do, you have crap like that. occurring, where you've got a bunch of channels getting taken down when they don't actually deserve it. And YouTube and Google need to understand you can't rely on automation for this. You can't program an AI to do all of this for you. You need to actually have actual thinking humans go through these things and actually sort out the ones that need to be taken down and not. You can't rely on, I mean, if YouTube even had something akin to the honor system, I mean, I can't believe I'm using this as a positive example, but if they actually moved forward on the YouTube Heroes thing where users could actually report the channels and it actually would mean something, then at least that would be something. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but even then, it just shows YouTube needs to understand you can't automate this. You actually have to enforce it with actual people. And that's why they're in this mess in the first place.
You know, YouTube, you're starting to remind me of an old infomercial I used to see in my 20s because I worked really weird hours, where a guy was trying to sell basically like a rotisserie cooker at 4 a.m. And his tagline for it was, and I'm not kidding, set it and forget it. All right. And that's kind of how YouTube is looking to solve this problem, is through automate. They want to set it and forget it. And the bottom line is you can't do that because situations on the internet literally change hourly. A term that was one thing 1 minute is no longer that.
Nope.
CP is the perfect example of that. All right. So at that point, you can't, I find it funny. We keep on saying you need manpower to be able to handle this. And then we hear YouTube hiring 10,000 new employees. And it's like, you have 10,000 new employees. It would be really great if if at least 5,000 of those employees were going towards manual reviews. I guess they didn't want to do that.
Well, and to be fair, Google, as the larger company, also doesn't have the greatest track record. I've read articles about people who have been hired by Google to search through the search results and filter out this stuff, and the levels of psychological trauma that these employees had to endure. And here's the messed up thing. These were temp employees, contracted from a temp agency. So they weren't ever actually hired by Google. And when they were suffering a lot of these mental problems from, the fact that they're basically seeing the absolute worst of humanity as part of their day job, Google wouldn't cover any sort of mental health care. It's like, oh yeah, well, we've got like a counselor on staff. You can visit this many times. And then once your term with them was up, you were basically on your own. And so,
I will say this though, the idea that you presented, I get that we need to have somebody there. Do I want to have, as our live chat has kind of pointed it out, YouTube heroes are basically vigilantes. They will knock down whomever they see as a problem, which means in a lot of cases, kind of like YouTube does this anyway, is people they don't agree with. So that's kind of the issue with that. I don't like the professional solution here either, but I agree with Romney completely. This cannot be solved with an algorithm. I've heard, I don't know if you follow the Joe Rogan podcast, but I'm getting sick and tired of the tagline that he brings up with YouTube, which is he met with Susan Wojcicki, and all she said was that they're working with blunt tools, and all they need to do is hone them. You've been working with blunt tools for years, and you've not solved a damn thing. So here's an idea. How about we drop the toolkit that you're using and we start working with something else?
Yep. I mean, the problem is that with even the idea of the YouTube Heroes thing, I'm reminded of that episode of The Simpsons where the invasive species, where Bart finds the lizards that ate the bird eggs, and then they're just like, oh, well, then we bring in this type of snake. But then we're stuck with snakes. Then we bring in this type of monk. Then you bring in these gorillas that thrive on snake meat. It's like, but then you're stuck with gorillas. It's like, oh no, that's a beautiful part. In the winter, they're all freeze to death. And you see kind of the problem is that, again, I get the idea is that you don't want this escalating arms race within the user base. But again, as Adam put it, and as we've all stated, YouTube, what you got going is clearly not working. You need to try something new.
You are literally interpreting the definition of insanity. You are doing the exact same thing and expecting different results. Yeah. And you're never getting them. So here's an idea. I'm just spitballing this here for a second. Why not try not hitting your head against the wall to see if it actually works. How about we actually, and I'm saying like go nuts with this because it's Google, and I'm sure Google wants this crap stopped because they're getting just as bad a reputation out of it as YouTube has. Bring in outside people and actually assess whether or not you can handle this with things like YouTube Heroes, or like either you can handle it internally or externally. That's just kind of your bottom line here. I'm also going to go ahead and say this, and then we'll give the floor to Alex if he has anything else to add. Is, you know, big YouTubers, it's great and all that you feel the plight of the little guy. And I've seen it all throughout my Twitter all day. I've even seen it on my Instagram from a lot of them all day, where it's like, we feel the plight of the little guy because this doesn't hurt us. This hurts you guys. Well, I don't see you guys stepping up and trying to get subscribers to people. I don't see you guys stepping up and trying to get recognition to smaller channels unless they're, you know, buddies with you. Okay. So I'm not going to criticize you. I think you guys are handling things the best way that you know how, but let's cut the BS. I know that you want to say like, we feel the plight of the little guy. You're not going to do anything about it. Let's just be 100% honest about that. I hate to be a dick, but none of you are planning on doing anything about it.
Yeah, it just reminds me of that scene from Hotel Rwanda where the guys, after the news crew comes in and films everything, and the guy running the hotel is just like, oh yeah, it's really great that you guys are finally telling a story. Finally something will actually happen. And then the cameraman just literally looks at him and he's just like, look, I'm going to level with you. Families in America are just going to look at that, say, oh God, that's awful. And then they're going to go back to eating their dinner. That's kind of what this is.
Yeah, because I follow a lot of these guys. All right. I follow a lot of them, and I'm getting sick and tired of on my Twitter and on my Facebook following or seeing statements from, I'm just going to throw one out there, Tipster or The Quartering or Sid Alpha or a number of others that are just like, we feel bad for the little guy. Well, you're not really doing anything to help out now, are you?
Yeah, it just reminds me of that meme that circulated a while back where it's like it takes stills from the Lord of the Rings where it's just like Gondor calls for aid. It's like we're sending all of our thoughts and prayers to Gondor.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
And then someone took it a step further with like the Facebook image where it showed the tree of Gondor over what's the name of the King of Rohan? Theoden. Yeah, and it just showed the Gondor like white tree like image thing over a profile picture of Theoden.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's great and all that you feel bad. It's great and all that, but I remember hearing from so many YouTube veterans. I think I've even heard the story from Alex too. Like, this used to happen in the early days of YouTube where you'd have the bigger channels then link out the videos that those people were working on, and that got their audience to be able to get access to this new person that they hadn't had access to before. Okay. This doesn't happen anymore. Not unless they're buddy of a buddy of a buddy. Okay. Let's be honest with each other. This doesn't happen anymore. So it's great and all that you care. But the bottom line is, I'd rather have you working on this instead of sitting there going, oh, poor small YouTubers. Also, stop doing bullshit like Logan Paul. Stop it.
Yeah. That's a whole separate can of worms. And honestly, and although I'm probably going to invoke a lot of anger, even from my fellow panelists saying this, at this point, I just have to ask, Google, you've sunk so much money into this. I understand that, yeah, YouTube is ubiquitous, but with the amount of money you've been losing with all controversy after controversy after controversy, just lower the axe. It's time
to walk away.
It's time to finally swing down the axe and kill it. Just finally pull the plug and basically, clearly this is not working. Clearly none of you people know what the hell you're doing. So we're just going to cut our losses and just move on to a different platform.
Somebody put it, not recently, but like a year ago, somebody put it perfectly. I didn't know this, but there was actually a point where Jack Dorsey tried to frantically sell Twitter because he couldn't get any money off of it. It was losing money. And so he was trying to frantically sell Twitter to people. And now he's happy to be the CEO of it or whatever, according to Joe Rogan. But, yeah, I think it's now time, Google, for you to pull a Jack Dorsey, for you to just start frantically selling this.
Or not even frantically selling, even just, kind of doing what L'Oreal did to Filmation. If it really comes to that, where it's a case where...
Yeah, just step away.
Yeah, just like either step away or basically just like, okay, you know what? I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but pull a Konami if you have to, where it's just like, okay, we're going to break it all down, move you all to different parts of Google and then try to create something better, because clearly you idiots don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I actually kind of wonder if that's technically happening, because right now they're getting rid of Google Plus and all of the integration that came with YouTube. And at that point, they're going to have a broken heap of a mess. So at that point, they might as well try and do YouTube 2.0.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's kind of my viewpoint. I know that a lot of content creators out there follow us, and we really do appreciate your input and everything like that. I'm not doing this because I'm looking to knock you guys. I'm just sick and tired of the bullshit.
Yeah, it's basically stop pretending, like Google, stop pretending you care about us when you clearly don't. I mean, if you're gonna be draconian about it, it's like a Band-Aid. Just rip it, god damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, you get the final thought on this one. Any final thoughts that you want to give on the YouTube situation?
Well, I mean, if PewDiePie wants to migrate over to Dailymotion, then surely that will give the platform a big boost. Well, they're not like PewDiePie.
Well, until Article 13 goes into effect, which will kill Dailymotion.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
true.
much. Well, actually, wouldn't it kill PewDiePie?
But until then,
wouldn't it kill PewDiePie too, because it's European?
Well, it would, because, well, Article 13, now, for context, this is a resolution that's been proposed for the European Union that, I mean, people saw the news story of how, like, oh, the EU wants to ban memes and the use of copyrighted content by people who don't own the copyright. And considering all the crap we dealt with Let's Plays, it would probably hurt PewDiePie immensely.
Greatly.
And Dailymotion, because it's based in France, which is a major proponent of the EU, if Article 13 gets ratified by all the member states of the European Union, yeah, Dailymotion's going to go bye-bye.
Isn't Vimeo also European-based?
No, Vimeo's based in the States. It's just they went a different route of saying, okay, we're strictly for original content. We're not going to try to be YouTube. We're strictly, if you have short films, they kind of went the route of, hey, this is what we do. If it's your original content, we are not trying to compete with YouTube. This is our thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's, again, I highly recommend for anyone watching, this is not my usual recommendation, take a look at the Mysterious Mr. Enters web series Technocracy, the first episode discussing YouTube and the various issues with the other video platforms. It kind of puts everything into a much larger much greater, it basically summarizes everything much more succinctly than I could in the span of time that we have here.
Yep. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move on into the next story here, because I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head. And unfortunately, it only gets worse from here. So the next story that we're talking about, and I was this close, guys, to not bringing it up, because we're once again diving into treacherous waters, as we're going to be talking about the Vic Mignogna situation again. Except I'm going to put some caveats on it, because the bottom line is that I don't care if you stand with Vic, and I don't care if you want to kick Vic. Everybody has their own viewpoint on the matter, but things are getting out of hand on both sides. And so at this point, I'm not trying to come at this from this side is bad and here's why. I have no problem admitting this. I have my own opinion. I've done my due diligence. I've done my homework. I have my own opinion on the matter, but I feel that there are some bigger things to be able to address here, and as long as we keep to the point. So if people are wanting our opinions on the Vic Mignogna situation, you can either watch last week's or a couple of weeks ago's podcast where we gave our opinion on the matter, or you can address this with us directly on Twitter or the social media that we're on. Okay. So without further ado, here are the updates that I want to go over into the Vic Mignogna situation. There's tons of them, but I want to focus on two particular situations that happened. I know that people have blown their stacks. I know that there's been statements that have been made. I know threats have been made. But one of the things that came out above all else, and that listeners actually submitted to me, because at that time they thought it was legitimate. Now they actually helped to find out that it might not be, is that because of the I stand with Vic, kick Vic debate, we actually might have suffered a swatting from this situation. Okay. We actually had somebody accusing Vic Mignogna supporters of swatting her house. And already, like, this is something I never thought I would have to say, people. Okay. If you asked me when I started this podcast if I'd ever have to say this sentence, I would have looked you in the eye and laughed because it never would have happened. But now I have to say it. A person has died due to swatting. All right. We covered that last year. Swatting ain't good. I don't care what side you're on. Swatting ain't good. I don't care who you're doing it to. I don't care whether or not they deserve it. Swatting is not cool. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the rest of the internet in saying replace it with the pizza guy, but swatting ain't good. Okay? Can we all agree on that? Whether or not you think that this is legit, whether you think this is fake, because there is evidence saying that it's fake. All right? Can we all agree that swatting is bad and we should never resort to that? The
fact that we even have to say it says volumes.
Do I have to be your father? I'm already a dad of 2. Do I have to be everybody's father right now? Okay? Because here's the problem that's eventually going to happen with swattings, is people are not going to like the fact that swattings are happening and are going to want to arm themselves in self-defense, which is a proper escalation with things like this. And that doesn't end well. It ends in lives being lost. Because here's the thing. Either the SWAT team is going to take a life, which they already have, and the guy wasn't even involved, or some idiot is going to get lucky and he's going to hit an open spot on a SWAT team officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's the likelihood of where this is going to go. So I don't care if I have my own opinions on the matter. I'm sure that my panelists do. I don't care if you're blame Vic. I don't care if you support Vic. If you go to swatting, you are part of the fucking problem. Just simply put. Okay. I mean, we could present the evidence on the swattings. I'm going to let you guys kind of go and look into it simply because it depends on what side you're going to. It really does. Like there's supporting evidence for the swatting actually happening, and there's a good amount of evidence that supports that it didn't. But let's just stop the fake swattings right here and now. Any thoughts you guys want to add before I get into the second part of this?
Honestly, what's there to really say? I mean, it's very much the classic case of as soon as you start resorting to violence in any way, shape, or form, you've lost any sort of moral high ground you had. Like, you have no leg to stand on. The fact that you're willing to resort to violence instead of stating your point, then no one has any reason to listen to you because you are literally a crazy person who is going to try to attack people because they disagree with you. And nobody wants to deal with that. And this is the kind of crap that leads to, situations like China, where your internet usage is very heavily monitored amongst everything else. I mean, if people always say, oh, like we're headed towards an Orwellian society, yeah, well, doing crap like this is what gets us there more quickly.
Well, the other thing that I also want to point out before we get to Alex here is that because of the incident that happened last year, you're actually seeing I had to talk to a few friends of mine that are cops, but there's kind of like this nationwide movement amongst local PDs on how to handle the swattings and how to counteract them. Basically, like I haven't heard of official legislation here or not, but like actually creating categories within state law and federal law covering swatting and the penalties that would come with that. Being prepared for those situations, being prepared for getting those calls, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That's where this logically goes, is if you continue to do it consistently, they got to prepare for it, which means we're going to have more crap like this happen, and we're going to have it happen in volatile neighborhoods, which means you're going to have escalation, which means we're going to have a whole other monster on our hands when it gets worse, when the situation that I provided happens, when some piece of shit gets lucky and accidentally hits an officer in the neck and kills them. Okay. That's how this logically progresses. And then it becomes a real problem. So here's a great idea. Swatting doesn't solve your problem. It doesn't even make you feel better in the end. As a lot of people are starting to realize now that they look at Tyler Barris and see what the fuck he's dealing with. Okay. Alex, you kind of get the final thought before I move on to the next part of it.
I don't think there is much more to say. Don't swat. Don't be stupid.
Swatting's bad. Okay. Moving on.
Swatting didn't very bad. Okay.
Okay. The other part, and this one I'm actually kind of happy is happening just because now we could start to address this issue. Okay. Whether you're standing with Vic or not, this is where technically a civil dispute like this would go. And that is that Vic Mignogna actually announced yesterday, I believe. Yeah, it was yesterday night or last night, where he confirmed that after talking with some friends, after talking with a few people, he is going to seek representation and he is going to sue. But we don't really know who he's going to sue yet because we don't know who's representing him.
Yeah, looking at the facts of the case, the what they're looking at here is that it's likely he is going to be suing Funimation, Rooster Teeth, and Anime News Network are kind of the big three targets with this. The information of this lawsuit is that those are kind of the big three with Rooster Teeth and Funimation.
The only one I wasn't able to confirm was there are a couple of individuals that might also be part of this lawsuit.
Yes, but kind of looking at the nature of the lawsuit, what you could probably see here is that with Rooster Teeth and Funimation, he likely could file a wrongful termination lawsuit, but it's tricky considering that, especially in the state of Texas, where both companies are based, it is an at-will state, so that's something that could be hard to argue. And with Anime News Network, he could probably get a libel and slander suit filed. It would have to be filed separately, so it's kind of a case of that, yeah, he's got fairly strong cases against those three entities. How far they will go, well, depends on a variety of factors, and especially depending on who ends up representing the three entities at play.
And just to address the individuals that are possibly going to get sued, the only one that can be confirmed possibly is fellow voice actor Monica Rial. A lot of people are bringing up that he's got some viable complaints to be able to make there. I've also heard the possibility of Kaylin Sacedo, considering that she is technically the snowball that basically started this whole thing. There's technically enough proof to be able to sue her too. But again, can't really confirm or deny because a lot of people think that we know who the representation is. Technically, you don't. It's the guy who's running the GoFundMe that is paying for this. Okay, that's who you're thinking of, which is Nick Rekieta. Okay, Nick Rekieta is confirmed that he's running the GoFundMe, but he doesn't technically say that he's representing. He does have a video saying, here's what I'd do, but he's not confirming that he's representing him. He's confirming that Vic has gotten representation. So at that point, that could mean a number of other things. With that being said, Alex, sorry.
Yeah, so anyway, my question is, though, could he really sue Funimation or Rooster Teeth, considering he was working for them as an actor, not as like an actual on-staff employee? Like Funimation would employ. Well,
Funimation, he was not working just as an actor; he was working as a producer as well.
Yeah, and so there he was considered an actual employee of the company. Rooster Teeth, that's where it gets a bit tricky because, like you said, it was a contract. It was contract work. Granted, it was a long-standing contract because he was a recurring character. He voiced a recurring character on the show RWBY. But you do bring up a good point, Alex, that for situations like Rooster Teeth, wrongful termination, kind of harder since, again, it could, depending on the nature of the contract, it could be maybe a breach of contract if he's able to prove that they violated the contract and agreements they had with him. Funimation, he was a producer and performed a few other duties for the company, so there he's got a bit of a stronger case since that was kind of a larger source of his income. And
before I give it back to Alex, I mean, here's the thing. I've seen a lot of legal YouTube channels. I've talked to a few lawyers to see like what could be done and what couldn't be done. There's technically, according to them, that there would be evidence to be able to sue Funimation for things like wrongful termination, libel, defamation, things like that. Because here's the other argument that they made, and I don't know how much this sticks, but the fact that you terminated him means that you basically supported the fact, and the fact that you also admitted that you investigated means that you supported the allegations, when in fact, like your investigation was internal. You didn't hire official sources outside. It gets complicated, but they actually think that there's a case.
Yeah, and that's why this would be specifically a civil suit. This wouldn't go to
this is not criminal, guys. This is not going criminal.
Yeah, this is not going criminal. Nobody's really going to jail unless for some reason they decide to perjure themselves on the stand, which you'd have to be stupid in order to really think you can get away with that. But yeah, this would strictly be a civil suit, meaning that Vic would be able to sue for damages from Funimation, Rooster Teeth, and Anime News Network, as well as other people, depending on the nature of the suit. Because given how many people we've already listed, and not even including the private individuals, this is a behemoth that is a huge undertaking for anybody, depending on how far Vic Mignogna is wanting to take this.
Yeah, and I think in all honesty, it's going to be up to where his lawyer thinks that he can go with it. Like, and again, we don't know who that representative is. We don't know who's representing him, so we don't know their strategy. We only know what some legal YouTubers are saying they do. Alex, we've kind of walked all over you, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the Funimation. I know you say he's had more on-staff roles at Funimation. I can't confirm that just based on his filmography from Anime News Network, because most of his work is as an actor, the occasional ADR director. That makes me feel like it might be under more talent, but again, that would obviously be for his attorney to really kind of determine how much.
I think the one that was officially announced on the Funimation severing ties, the one that they announced, he was a producer on.
Yeah, the Morose Monakian was one of the ones he was a producer on.
I couldn't remember what it was called.
It just says he's cast, so
he was cast, but from what I looked into it is that he was cast, but he was also a producer, and the production duties that he was initially hired on for have since been transitioned to another person at Funimation.
Yeah,
I think you guys are misconstruing it just a bit, because I think you're confusing the role that he's playing, because his role is credited as executive quotes. I don't think that means he was actually a producer on the show.
Yeah, and the problem is with especially executive producer credits, they can be pretty nebulous. Like, it's hard to say what that title actually means.
Yeah, I think you're confusing his character name, which is
just to clarify.
The character's name is executive. That's like the character he's playing is executive. He's not an actual producer for the show.
Really quick, I'm going to stop you really quick because one person that just messaged me is a little confused. What Alex is basically trying to argue here is that he wasn't an official employee on TAP. Okay, like he wasn't there consistently, like say Christopher Sabat. He's more of an independent contractor, like most of the voice actors that walk in and do things like My Hero Academia are. It's only a few of them that get established and get contracts to be active employees at Funimation.
Right, like Justin Cook would probably be more of an employee, because
John Bergmeyer, Justin Cook, yeah,
because they work more in the business side of the company, right? That's again, I know this is mostly going to be where his attorney determines. I can still see the potential lawsuits for slander and libel, but as far as like wrongful termination, I'm still not totally set and clear on that, considering again, actors are not really employees, and those aren't really like I don't think they really fall under wrongful termination, because again, actors can just be released or passed over for parts for any multitude of reasons.
I don't know if this is actually one of the arguments, but one argument that I've heard being stated for wrongful termination with Funimation in particular is that, again, we have confirmed through other tweets that an internal investigation happened at Funimation. But since those things are internal, we don't know who actually was doing the investigation. And it's possible, although I haven't seen the tweet itself, that one of the girls who is accusing Vic may have admitted that she was part of the investigation team that got him terminated. And if that's the case, then yeah, there might be an argument for that, because you had a party that was already biased when your investigation needed to be unbiased. But that's, again, you have to prove that. You have to have the evidence for it, and all I have is hearsay.
Well, theoretically, they would be a part of it, because they'd be called as for testimony, right? In an investigation.
No, I'm talking actually investigating other people. If they were in there for testimony, that makes sense. But we're talking actually running the investigation, and that would be a problem.
And honestly, as unfortunate as this is, I think the lawsuit and having it actually go to trial would probably be the best thing for the situation, because in a courtroom, that's when all of the stories, that's when everything has to come out under oath, under testimony. I mean, to kind of paraphrase from Ace Attorney, the courtroom is not so much about like getting the guilty verdict, getting the not guilty verdict. The courtroom is where the job of the lawyers is to get to the truth of what actually happened. And although it's an unfortunate and very stressful thing, I think that would probably be the best thing to come out of this lawsuit, is that this is where all of this information that we've been hearing, all the hearsay, this is where it's finally put to the test, scrutinized, and where we can actually get to the truth of what the hell is going on.
Well, and here's the other thing that people need to consider, and this is why I'm supportive of this lawsuit happening and that Vic is manning up and doing it, okay? Whether you stand with him or not. Now we go to an actual court that can judge him, okay? Twitter court is basically witch hunts. All right. Somebody in our live chat just barely pointed this out. Twitter is kangaroo court. All right. That's the best way to be able to look at it. And so at this point, the other thing that can happen is actual evidence can be presented. And we don't just have statements and stories and all that. Actual physical evidence can be presented to either hurt or help Vic. And then at that point, we can have a final verdict based on that. Because the bottom line is, and this is the one thing I want to point out to the Stand with Vic people. Okay, I hate to be the guy here. I hate to rain in on your parade. But he gets, let's just say for the sake of argument, he gets proven exonerated. He's still damaged after this. He's still damaged goods because you're never going to get rid of this. There's always going to be employers that can now look up that this scandal happened to him. Okay. And yeah, he might be able to say paperwork, or he might be able to bring court paperwork saying, yeah, I was exonerated and it's totally not a deal, but it's still going to hurt him in the long run.
Yep. Especially in the entertainment industry, which is all about good PR. I mean, nobody can really recover from really, really bad publicity, and not in the same way. I mean, especially when you consider some of the personal endeavors that Vic Mignogna has, like his Star Trek fan series and a few other projects that he himself has been trying to get off the ground. It's kind of a case where, yeah, even if he is cleared of everything, even if he's fully exonerated, the damage is still done.
Yeah, and for all the people who are hoping that as soon as he gets exonerated that he's going to be brought back as Broly, that's a pipe dream, guys. He's not coming back to Funimation. Frankly, if I were in his position, because I do voiceover myself, and I got accused of this crap, and I knew that it was wrongful, would I want to go work for that employer again? Probably not.
Nope.
I'd go look elsewhere, and I'd probably go take their competition, and I'd elevate them. Because at that point, they didn't accuse me of this bullcrap, you know? That's kind of how I would look at it.
Yep. And so, and again, like whether you're on his side or not, this is where things need to play out, is in an actual courtroom where evidence can be presented, and more importantly, the evidence can be examined, scrutinized, cross-examined, where you can actually see. And again, I know that for people,
and more importantly, I'm just going to throw this in here and then I'll let you continue, Ronnie. He can face his accusers.
Yes. And that's the important thing, because again, we've seen this stuff happen before, not even just in the entertainment industry. Again, I recommend to all of you people, read the play The Crucible, the Arthur Miller play, or even just look into what happened during the McCarthy era with the HUAC hearings and the whole notion of people being accused of things that they had no association with, but basically being, well, tried in what was effectively a kangaroo court, backed by a senator who went on record stating that he was a frequent drinker. And so, again, and I also speak as someone who has friends who have gone through this process as victims of sexual assault. Yes, it sucks to have a defense lawyer cross-examine and try to disparage your character, but that's kind of their job. Their job is that they have to represent the interests of their client. Yeah, it sucks, but again, if you're actually telling the truth, you'll be able to weather it, and you'll be able to actually push through, because the truth does win out, even if it's a very long, painful, arduous process. But that is why our legal system works the way it does.
And that's actually the reason why you want it to work the way that it does, is because, just like Romney said, if you're telling the truth wins out. You weather it. It sucks, but you'll be able to get through it. Some things in life are hard, and they need to be weathered through. But if you're falsely accusing, that's going to get proven too. And that's going to get proven a lot. And here's the thing. This is the part that I also want to kind of reassure people in this regard. If you think you got it bad, wait until somebody who's being falsely accused, because they are going to get it far worse. They're going to have so many holes poked in their testimony. They're not going to even know which way is up. All right. They're going to have a far worse concept of it because they're the ones that are probably going to be treated as hostile witnesses.
Yep. And especially, and again, what people need to understand is that accusations like this can do a lot of damage. I mean, in Utah alone, there are 2 major cases of people not only falsely accused, falsely convicted of sexual assault crimes. These were cases where children basically told the police that their parents had molested them, even if they didn't actually do it, just to get rid of them. Yep. Only for, them to realize, hey, 20 years without my parent is actually kind of crappy. I probably shouldn't have done that. And yeah, this happened in Utah. The Salt Lake Tribune's reported on this twice with 2 separate cases. And this is why these things need to be whittled down and cross-examined. It's because, that's what needs to be done. And as Drac just put in the chat, and I'm not sure if that is the name of the person who said it, but
believe it's a Breitbart quote, but I might be wrong.
I'm going to look it up because I know it was a Supreme Court justice who said it. I'm going to look up the name.
Basically, the quote that I just put up is sunlight is the best disinfectant. All right. That's the best way to be able to handle any of these situations, especially when it's murky water. Bring it out to the light of day. Bring it out to the light of day and see what dies. Okay.
Louis Brandeis is credited with writing publicity.
Justice Louis Brandeis. There you go. All right.
Justly commended as a remedy for social and industrial diseases. Sunlight is said to be the best disinfectant. Electric light is the most efficient policeman. But why did he say that? You'll have to read the rest for yourselves later.
Yeah, exactly. Go read that. Yeah, so, and unfortunately, we need to move on because we're running out of time here. But Alex, you kind of get the final. Alex, you kind of get the final say. Anything you want to add because you haven't really talked about going to court.
Well, yeah, I guess pretty much as you guys said, it's time for everybody to have their day in court, essentially. So we'll have to see this through.
Yep. I know that a lot of people are giving me bad comments like, you should just let things flow naturally. We have 2 hours, and I do tend to let things flow as naturally as possible, but occasionally I just have to get things going because we could literally go for a while.
Yeah, and plus we all don't want our heart rates skyrocketing to the point where we all simultaneously have heart attacks on the air, because no one wants to watch that.
And again, if you guys want our individual opinions on the situation itself, do you stand with Vic? Do you want to kick Vic, etc.? Reach out to us individually, all right? Or you can do reach out to us individually. You can ask in the comments section. Maybe we'll get back to you, kind of deal. That's the best way to be able to do it, because the bottom line is that I don't want to get these 2 involved in something they don't want to be involved with. And frankly, given what I know, and yes, I have chosen a side, technically. I don't agree entirely with it, but I have technically chosen a side on the matter. I still don't want to touch this thing with a 20-foot pole. All right. That's just the way it is. Moving on into the next story, that technically the next couple of stories to wrap up the night happened while we were gone for a week. Okay. But these were the bigger stories that did happen and that you as listeners wanted us to cover. And we're going to start off with the top one that everybody sent me because, well, everybody knows that I'm your friendly neighborhood Blizzard fan. And that is the announcement from Activision Blizzard in their, I think it was a quarterly earnings call, where they officially announced that they were going to be laying off 8% of their active employee base, which rounded out to about 800 employees, 775 specifically, as Activision Blizzard is looking to do a massive restructuring and refocusing of their efforts to specifically the following franchises: Call of Duty, Candy Crush, Overwatch, Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Diablo franchises. Okay, so basically what's happening here is Activision Blizzard is hurting. They didn't necessarily have as good a 2018 as people want to admit. All right. This is why we're hearing all of the bad statements of why Heroes of the Storm has been abandoned, why StarCraft hasn't really had anything done with it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This is why that's happening, is that they had a bad year. And so they're having to refocus their efforts, which means moving those employees that were working on things like Heroes of the Storm over to franchises that they think are going to be more successful. All right. Do I agree with it? No. not entirely. But I don't agree with the way that they went about it. Specifically, the Heroes of the Storm issue, where they laid off a bunch of workers and didn't really give a whole lot of explanation and said, oh, by the way, Merry Christmas. All right. I don't agree with that stuff. But considering that they had a bad year, and considering the bad announcements that happened later on in the year, the restructuring and the refocusing efforts do kind of make sense in a weird way. Romney, you look like you've had something to say.
No, I was just reading through the story.
So basically what's happening is a lot of those employees, whether they were associated with Battle.net, whether they were associated with esports, whether they were associated just with the advertising, with content creators, things like that, they're all being retooled towards what they want to focus on. Now, the ones that wanted to focus on Heroes have been let go. If they wanted to focus on StarCraft, they've probably been let go too, etc. But this is what Blizzard's going to be doing from here on in. And I know, before people jump down my throat, I know a bunch of former Blizzard employees have voiced their concerns and said, yeah, we really do think that Bobby Kotick should be fired, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the bottom line. I agree with them, but they are not part of the process anymore.
Yeah.
I have thought Bobby Kotick should be fired since, 2009 at the very earliest.
Yeah, plus this is just something that occurs with any industry. Like you said, they had a bad year, and so they're having to cut their losses. According to the Variety article we're going off of, they're shifting a lot of their focus towards live services, maintaining Battle.net, trying to establish more of an esports presence, as well as putting a greater focus on advertising. And, well, it's very much a case of this is a business. As much as we'd like to think of, oh, games as art and games as fun and games, well, fun and games is serious business.
Well, the other thing, too, that I should also address is we got a little bit more details into the Destiny situation, where we now officially know that basically, I was about to say Activision. That's not right. Bungie bought the rights for Destiny back from Activision Blizzard, and that's how they get to do that's how they basically get to walk away and keep Destiny. All right. That's what they did. And you know what? I'm still going to compliment them for doing it. They paid through the nose, and it was a good thing they did, because Activision was not doing Destiny any favors. I'm not saying Blizzard wasn't doing them any favors, but Blizzard was so little involved. Battle.net was their involvement in Destiny 2. All right. Activision had effed that up way before Blizzard could have ever gotten their hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, a lot of people wanted my thoughts on the matter. The whole situation sucks. All right. The bottom line is the whole situation sucks. I'm a very passionate Blizzard fan, and it's just, I'll even admit it soured me to the product. All right. Like I've literally looked at my WoW account, and I've gone in, like, just to do the most minor task. But then I just kind of sit there in my head and go, why am I not going off and doing all the other stuff that I enjoyed in World of Warcraft? It's because this monkey is hanging around my neck. All right. And it's bothersome, and it sucks, but that's just the way it is. And this is what Activision Blizzard wants to do. And this is what they kind of have to do. They've had a very bad 2018. I think if you want to be able to say any game had a good year, Battle for Azeroth, but that's not compared to the way I understand it, compared to the numbers that the previous expansion Legion did, Battle was not as good. All right. I might be wrong about those numbers. You guys can clarify it, but that's one game out of many that came out in 2018. That doesn't make a company survive.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially when you consider some of the controversy that occurred with the Overwatch League as well, which would have hurt them as well, and the bad PR,
and the controversy that's happening currently on the Overwatch League. We're still having problems.
Well, yeah, and again, lest we forget, don't you all have phones?
Well, we can't make that joke anymore because Alex does now. Dang it, Alex.
Well, yeah, but it's just looking at that, I'm just like, that's where there's like, don't you all have phones? And then that's when they get a call from their stockbroker saying, yeah, your shares are not doing too good. Just
no. That and your CFOs jump ship.
Yeah,
oh,
like,
you hired a new one? He jumped ship too.
Yeah, like you keep losing them to Netflix for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on.
Well, and even then, like a lot of people wanted to point this out too, that like Mike Morhaime, who was the previous CEO of Blizzard, before he officially stepped down at the BlizzCon that we're talking about, he was going to stay on and do an advisory role. He's officially become a rat leaving a sinking ship. He's like, I'm out. I'm not advising you guys. There's even a movement basically saying let's fire that J. Allen Brack wants to be dethroned.
Yeah, I mean,
he's like, I walked into a situation I didn't want to be in.
I can probably imagine they're just like, you want some advice? Here's some advice. Jump.
I've even seen people make the joke of like, J. Allen Brack, how was your CEO tenure for like 2 months before Bobby Kotick kind of took over? Like, well, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Yeah, the whole situation overall sucks. I'm very sad that 775 employees lost their jobs. But I should also point something out. A lot of people think that it was devs that were also being fired. Devs weren't really affected. These were community managers. These were customer service guys. All right. These were the people that were considered non-essential in the restructuring effort. And it still sucks that they got fired, but these were the casualties you were going to have. So that's the unfortunate reality here. Alex, your thoughts on 700 plus employees getting laid off from Blizzard?
I feel bad for the employees, but it's hard to feel bad for Activision Blizzard when they kind of walked themselves into this corner here. Plus, didn't the CEO give himself a big pay bonus?
Bobby did, not Jay.
Right.
I need to clarify that because, again, for as long as he was the CEO, J. Allen Brack tried to get the crap done. He was one of the guys that came out and tried to backpedal Diablo, and he failed just as much as everybody else that came out and tried to backpedal that. But no, it was Bobby that did that, and apparently Bobby has a reputation for doing that.
Yeah, that sucks. Welcome to corporate America, everybody.
Activision Blizzard, we care about our employees until you make sure that we can't buy our 75-year-old scotch.
Oh, Blizzard. Join your cohorts of Bungie.
See, part of me is part of me is the Blizzard fans. Like, don't blame this on Blizzard. It's Activision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Join your Bungie cohorts and jump ship.
Oh yeah, like I've seen so many former Blizzard employees basically say, "Come and join us on our projects." The one the one I would say don't join just yet was, I think it was Ben Brode, who worked on the Hearthstone team. He's working on a Marvel-based card game. The only problem is he's working with NetEase, the same people who effed up Diablo Immortal. Okay, that's the only one I would say don't go work for Ben Brode, because you're walking into the same situation. But they also did say, I should point this out before we kind of wrap it up, but they also did say in their restructuring efforts that pretty much the nightmare scenario is happening. They're doing what every other AAA company is going to be doing in this restructuring. They're looking to branch out to new markets, aka China. They're looking towards more money-making ventures in their games, aka microtransactions. All the nightmare scenario stuff that you're hearing, and as a Blizzard fan, it's making me very, very worried.
Yep. Welcome to the global economy.
Yeah. Final thoughts on this one before we move into the next one, which is a little bit sillier.
Well, what's more that can be said that we haven't already said already?
We hope you guys got jobs. We hope you can pay your absurdly high rent out there in California.
And we hope that you have phones.
Yeah.
And vans with which to sleep in. That was one of the things that just pissed me off so bad about the stuff we were finding out at Blizzard, is like, you found out that people were literally sleeping in vans because they couldn't afford apartments in California. And Blizzard didn't do anything to help out with this concept. They just knew that people wanted to work at Blizzard.
Yeah, although to be fair, if Blizzard even wanted to do anything, I'm pretty sure, well, California would probably, I mean, when you consider
they wouldn't have won that fight.
Yeah,
but they weren't going to fight it either.
Well, yeah, just especially considering that you had California pass a law that banned companies from having, like, cafeterias for their employees, where they could provide food for their employees, to offset the really high cost of living. It's like, see, California, this is why people live in their vans when working for companies in your state, because you do crap.
See, California, this is why you have to hire poop detectors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that exists, people. That exists.
I mean,
thanks, San Francisco.
Yeah, all I can say is, hey, Blizzard, after you after you break up with Activision, come to Utah. We've got plenty of space. Our cost of living is pretty good.
Dude, Blizzard would treat you, or Utah would treat Blizzard right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're so good that even EA is here.
Well, what I would really like to see is Blizzard push out the EA office, but that's me. Moving on into the next story that we have, and this is the last story before we get into Build a Better Geek. So this one is technically something I think all of us pretty much predicted was going to happen. I keep on want to saying last week, but it technically was last week, where we found out from the Academy what people might remember that the Academy was going to restructure a lot of their efforts to be able to not only lessen the time of the Academy Awards, but also be able to accommodate new categories like that so popular Best Popular Film category that, how long did it last? A day? Less than a month. We'll go with that. We found out that one of the other things that they were going to do was they were going to take certain awards and only and take care of them during commercial breaks. Because at this point, the award list is huge, and they were looking for any way to be able to cut down on the time. You'll have to correct me on this, Alex. I think the last one was clocked at about 4.5 hours.
I don't remember. They usually run about 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, so they were looking to cut down time so that the networks could get off their back. So at that point, they announced earlier last week what awards, what categories were going to actually be in the commercial breaks. And kind of like what we said when we initially covered that idea basically happened. So the ones that were affected were film editing, live action short, makeup, and hairstyling.
No, and cinematography, makeup and hairstyling.
Cinematography as well. Yeah, sorry. Makeup and hairstyling is one category. Cinematography, film editing, live action short. Okay. Yeah. And I remember having this conversation with you two, and we all giggled at this because we knew it was going to happen. Guess what happened? The people who were being nominated raised a stink. And a big stink, might I add. Yeah. Because they wanted to be able to be covered and have the cameras on them when they won, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So guess what happened a few days later? The Academy Awards apologized and reversed their decision.
Yep.
They are not having a good year.
That presumes that they've had a good year in the last few years.
That presumes that they're still relevant.
I mean, just in terms of like putting the show together, they've just had a pretty rough year of it. It's like, we're gonna make a new popular movie category. Well, that's dumb. Okay, we got this guy to host. How dare you? Okay, he's not coming back. We're gonna have no host.
And I'd like to point out for the record, the people that are coming out are the same people that you're trying to accommodate.
Yeah.
People like me aren't complaining. Do you want to know why people like me aren't complaining?
Or you don't
because
care,
we don't
so.
care. Because you've already done this for so many years, we don't care. So at that point, you're complaining to the people who are like, bah, 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 and they will always be. Bah, 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 bah. That's who you're accommodating to.
Yeah. I mean, of all the decisions they've made, I mean, and this may come from me because I recently read about this in one of the books I've been reading, where it's a case of, okay, of all the categories you were going to add, of all the changes you were going to make, why are you making all the stupid ones?
Yeah, why are you making all the stupid ones?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not kidding. I know we had this conversation where we basically said, oh, you put those on commercial breaks, the people are going to complain, or the companies that are involved are going to complain. You're going to cave because you're the Oscars. You're going to cave. And then at that point, you're back to square one again. You have a 4.5 hour show where you weren't able to cut off a damn minute.
There are ways to cut off some of the minutes. I mean, there's so many like little padding events that they squeeze into the show. It's like
padding events. You could cut down the speeches.
Maybe
I mean, there's
show on the red carpet because nobody actually cares.
You could maybe take a lot of those actors who think that they're better than everybody else and cut down their speeches so that they don't actually leave a horrible taste in the viewers' mouths.
Well, okay, let's get into some more likely solutions here. It's like, well, one, you don't need to tell us who won like the special technical achievements of merit, whatever they call it, because there's always like a bunch of different special honorary awards and they hand those out at totally different times,
Yes.
mind you. They don't hand those out during the actual ceremony and telecast. So it's like, okay, don't need that.
My problem with that is that there's just so many of them now with the Oscars.
Yeah, you don't need to tell us how the PricewaterhouseCoopers firm counts the ballots. You don't need a special video on that. We don't need the Academy president to come out with a special message. Maybe on an anniversary show, fine, but not every freaking year. You don't need whatever rando guest that you find to come out and do something. Just move along. You don't need.
And maybe you'll correct me on this. I know that this happened in years that I watched, but I don't know about recent years. Where they do like the best actor, the best actress, the best supporting actor. They actually will bring out they'll bring out a choir stand of a bunch of previous winners and introduce them individually.
Not quite what they've been doing probably like the last 10 years. I'm not sure if it's been consistent. I can't remember, but rather than just say, here are the nominees, they actually will like, oh, I'll just say, oh, Jesse Eisenberg, you gave hope to nerds everywhere by playing Mark Zuckerberg. This is literally how it went. You're like, you don't need to do that. Just say, here are like the best the actors who drives the film. Here are your nominations for best actor in a leading role.
Yeah, I'm okay with you explaining what the award is for, not for the pat myself on the back awards of, man, you made me cry when you were in this movie.
Yeah.
That already makes me think that this person's getting the award.
Yeah, and here's probably a good tip that may also help. Stop trying to be funny. It hasn't worked the past few years. I mean, you can shave off time, but instead of having these long-running
if you're going to be funny, then bring on somebody who's actually funny.
No, I would just go kind of the opposite. I was like, okay, rather than doing these long sketches, rather than trying to have a bunch of these comedians, just like, okay, let's just go the opposite route. Kind of just go the strictly dignified route, because then at the very least, it shows that you're not trying to have this winking self-awareness that you don't actually have. I mean, yeah, it was funny a couple of times when people said, oh yeah, the industry is a bit of a circle jerk. And I mean, it was kind of funny when Seth MacFarlane did it because he had no idea he was going to be hosting the Oscars and kind of ran with it. Stop trying to recreate Seth MacFarlane's award show. You just don't. I mean, that was like a one-time thing.
I remember this like from I was probably like Oscars 07 or Oscars 08 when Jon Stewart was hosting, and the Academy just went nuts with like montages that year, and Jon Stewart came out after like so many montages. Like, I can't wait for the Academy's montage to montages.
This is how bad the situation has gotten. Later years will make fun of previous years. All right? Because that's what's expected.
Yeah.
That's how bad this has gotten. I've got a great idea. How about you just treat this like a damn award show and just hand out the dang awards with an occasional music presentation? We don't have to have the glorified pat myself on the back awards.
It's also just a case of, you're not the Carol Burnett show. Enough of the skits. We don't care about the skits. You haven't earned what she earned. Stop.
No, or in the case that Alex brings up with Jon Stewart, you didn't earn the montages. That's what worked for him. But then again, I mean, the problem is you want to bring in comedians to be funny on the stage. But I kind of am glad that Kevin Hart told you no, because you would have restricted him every which way you could. Because he's a dirty comedian. It would never have worked.
Nope.
You basically have him make fun of the fact that he was in Jumanji the entire time. That's what you would allow Kevin Hart to do. So good on you, Kevin Hart, that you rejected them. Later considered it again. Wish you hadn't done that, but hey, there you go.
Yeah, it's just the Oscars. There's just way too much to just try to fix, and we're just three randos on the internet, so it's highly unlikely that they're going to listen to us unless somehow one of them happens to be watching.
I don't care. I'm not watching. Nothing's changed here for me. I get that people were...
I did find the whole thing. Okay, so I posted this in the Geek News too when I posted up the story. I did find it pretty ironic because the current Academy president himself was a cinematographer. He was a DP, so I thought that was a bit ironic that he was trying to push out cinematography to the commercial breaks.
Yeah,
but cinematography is pretty goddamn important to your movie. That's kind of something you need to, I think, present and show and give them their due respect.
The problem is that they relegated it off to this is why I don't like the classification of the Geek Awards, because then at that point they immediately assume that only the film geeks care about them. That's not true.
Well, here's the thing: only film geeks watch the Oscars anyway.
This is true.
Then,
like, I mean, you'll get families that'll do it because their favorite celebrity will go up, but that's about it.
But really, it's the Oscars. I don't know if this has always been the case or if it's just now, but it's always been made for the film enthusiast, for the people who are really passionate and interested in film, whether or not they like the Oscars or not. That's kind of who it's more made for. It's not made for the general audience anymore.
I just barely had this idea, and I think that this was going to get you millions of viewers. All right, are you ready, Oscars? Okay. If people start talking too long, instead of playing them off with the music, how about you do what all of the Looney Tunes cartoons made us think actually happened, where that cane just starts mysteriously coming out of nowhere and it yanks them off the screen, because that's what people are going to want to see. So at that point, go ahead and bring up your Ellen DeGenereses. Go ahead and bring up your Kevin Harts. Go ahead and bring up all of the your Gwyneth Paltrows, just so that we can all see them get yanked off the stage.
Yeah, basically go the NASCAR route where everyone watches just to see who crashes.
I'd watch.
I mean,
I'd watch just because I know that there's going to be tons of them that are going to go on their own pat themselves on the back speeches, and I want to see them get their asses cut off.
And I mean, if it's a matter of, oh, well, it's dangerous, okay, a conveyor belt. Just have the conveyor belt just slowly start moving them off stage when they're taking too long.
There you go. Or another.
Do what they did with Tom Hanks when Tom Hanks had to give a lecture about not making your speech too long, and the musicians actually come up and start playing in his face and smash a violin over him.
Yeah. Which, speaking of which, it's still a shame that there's still no award for stunt performers, because that still needs to be a thing. I mean, seriously, they're the backbone of the industry.
Or here's an idea, an animation category that doesn't involve 2 Disney films. Okay.
Maybe it's time to consider what the Annies have done, and that is partition your animation category, because the Annies now have Best Animated Feature and Best Independent Animated Feature. So now the Annies isn't just dominated by Disney and DreamWorks, with the occasional Warner Brothers in for good measure.
That's a great idea. Do you want to know what your problem is? The Oscars always look at them as kid stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, again, the whole push to diversify the voting body of the Academy, one can hope that things will change.
Well, that's always the hope, but when has it actually happened? I mean, again, the whole reason we even got Best Animated Feature was because a bunch of actors threw a hissy fit when Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head here. This is stupid. If you guys are going to watch the Oscars, I mean, feel free to just mock them on Twitter for this, because it would actually be funny if they recant that and instead decide to do other categories. They get on the commercial breaks and then they have to deal with those guys complaining about them. I would find that personally funny.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Don't bring up the Nickel Fellowships. I mean, those guys never go on to anything. The only Nickel Fellowship winner that I can think of that's actually managed to gain true notoriety is, unfortunately, Aaron Kruger.
Yeah. But anyway, so it's time to move on to our Build a Better Geek segment, which a lot of people have considered to be me just basically preaching to everybody. And that's not what I'm aiming to do with this. I'm basically trying to help everybody be better, because there's always room for us to be able to improve. I follow the Star Trek The Next Generation theology here, which is that we can always be better than we were yesterday, kind of thing. So for all the people who are saying that I'm preaching to you, well, sure, but I'm not trying to be the preacher here. I'm trying to say, we can actually do better. All right. And with that being said, I have some hard advice to give this week. The topic that we have this week is being able to, it's probably going to be one in a series where I'm going to try and get people to step outside their fandoms, because the problem is that once we get stuck in those fandoms, you get a little bit of a tunnel vision. And this is going to sound blunt, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there, which is read a book outside of your fandom to expand your horizons. All right. A lot of people are going to take this the wrong way. It was like, oh, you just think we're illiterate? No, I don't think you're illiterate. But what I do think happens with a lot of people, myself included, is that you love what you love and you only read what you love. So at that point, all you're doing is holding yourself back in the fact that you could actually find something that you would love outside of your fandom, outside of your genre, outside of your passion, and be passionate about that too. As I've said numerous times, I am a geek of many, many, many different passions. This is why I don't restrict myself. If I want to talk about anime, I talk about anime. If I want to talk about books, I talk about books. Because I love it all. I love being able to find a good story. And so at that point, this is more of just an encouragement to be able to go find a book. Just go to your local library or go to your local Barnes and Noble and just find a book that you wouldn't necessarily read and give it a chat and give it a try. That's all you have to do. You don't have to like it. Let's give it a try. Books cost what? $5 now? $6?
Well, depending on, hardcover versus paperback and how new the book is. I mean, new releases kind of run $20 to $25. I mean, depending again on the author and the genre and the publisher. So I'd say more average between $10 to $20.
And what I'm also saying is that I'm not saying that you have to go and find, this novel that everybody loves at your local elementary school. Okay. But let's just say
looking at your local elementary school, you should probably leave because you're going to scare the children.
Probably. But what I'm basically trying to say is, let's just say for the sake of argument, you don't read manga. I don't read manga. I've tried numerous times, but I just can't get into it. So at that point, go try it. You might like it. That's basically what I'm trying to say here is if you actually try to expand your horizons, they might actually get expanded. And so it's not necessarily a bad reason to try them. Just to give people an example of something that I'm doing right now. For some reason, in early months of the year, I find myself in a weird personal improvement kind of craze. And so this year I decided I hate to take from Romney's reading club, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I've actually been getting into self-help books quite a bit just because, I've got a lot of stressful situations and I'm looking to make things better. And so a book that I would recommend to people who are looking to get into self-help stuff would be Positively Unstoppable by Diamond Dallas Page. I've been enjoying the heck out of it. It's been able to have really what I prefer to be a more blunt approach on how to improve your own life by acknowledging your own faults, as well as being able to look at things the way you should really, which is hard, and be able to actually see your faults and your problems with it so that you can then improve. So that would be my recommendation. But if it's for you, it's you haven't necessarily tried a book like Moby Dick, go ahead and try it. You might like it. That's what I'm trying to point out here. You might actually like what you're reading. And with that, I'm getting some weird looks from my panel, like I'm preaching. Am I preaching?
Kinda.
I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to.
Your show. If you want a monologue, you can monologue.
Well, that's really what I'm trying to point out here. Because one of the things that I do appreciate from other people who have taken on this subject is that it's not necessarily a bad idea to try out books, films, TV shows that you wouldn't necessarily have tried out if you were tunnel visioning within your own fandom. Yep. I'm narrowing it to books because I actually do think we could get into it with film and we could get into it with TV.
Yeah, I mean, the classic quote I always like to use is how Hideaki Anno kind of talks about how he reads romance stories written by women because it's a perspective he knows he can't understand otherwise because he's a man and doesn't have the greatest grasp of romance. Yes, he's married, but he even admits, I don't have the greatest understanding of it, so I try to read and understand the perspectives of those that do because it makes him because he feels it makes him a better storyteller.
Yeah, because it always, being able to go outside of what you normally know can actually help expand your horizons in our case, professionally. Like Romney just said with the Anno quote, Anno does that to be able to expand his horizons outside of what he normally writes. That's what we technically need to do because we might actually be required to write things we don't necessarily know a lot about.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it even goes like if you look at the way actors approach things. I mean, going into voice acting, sometimes you may be cast in a role that isn't part of something you've actually experienced yourself. I mean, let's say okay, probably not the greatest example, but let's say for the sake of example, Adam gets a voice role on an animated series that is like a hardcore ER medical drama, and he has to play a doctor. I mean, Adam is not a doctor. Yes, he's married to a nurse, but
I could barely read the pseudoscience.
Yeah, and so naturally it would benefit if he were given such a role where he had to play like a very serious George Clooney sort of doctor to maybe understand like, okay, what is it that a doctor does? What are the procedures? What are the different things they have to deal with? I mean, a better example would probably be if he was cast as a police officer in a very serious.
I'll give you a legitimate example because this actually does happen. A lot of people don't know this because I don't really update it. I actually do some voiceover work now. One of the things that used to bother me at the very beginning is I'm not a sports guy. All right. I know that some people would say, well, you have a podcast that would say otherwise. Okay. That aside, I'm not your average football dude. I'm not your average baseball dude. I'm also not your average Ford truck dude. Do you know how many ads I've had to read where the actual guidelines for it, even though it's for dog food, are, we want you to read it like the Ford truck commercials do? Do you want to know what that means I have to go do? I have to go watch the Ford commercials to see what they did. Which means I get to sit there bored for 20 minutes trying to figure out, okay, so you just want a deep and butchy voice? That's the kind of thing that I would actually have to do. All right. Or the one that actually got me a couple of months ago where I actually had to write this thing as well as record it. And I had to write it in the form of a rom-com. You guys cannot begin to know the hatred that I have for romantic comedy. And I had to write it. Sometimes you have to expand your horizons, is all I'm saying. So there you go. There are a couple of examples around me.
But yeah, and it goes to show this is kind of where going outside of your comfort zone can benefit you if you're in a more creative in a creative industry. But even if you're not someone who's possessing some sort like pursuing a career in the arts, whether it's acting or writing or animation or stuff like that, expanding your horizons can have a lot of different benefits. I mean, I didn't just recommend The Art of War for the sake of saying, oh, I read The Art of War. No, The Art of War has some good applications that we can apply to our daily life. Like, especially knowing, like, I mean, there's the classic quote of know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never lose a battle. I'm not going to rattle off the whole thing, but it's a case of, hey, say you're working at a company that has to do a lot of negotiations. Naturally, you'll want to know more about the company that you're representing and kind of what you can answer honestly about it, as well as knowing what you're walking into and analyzing, okay, who am I negotiating with? What are they wanting out of this deal? And that's where knowledge from stuff like that can come in handy. I mean, I work in customer service, and I've had to apply some of this stuff when talking with customers who are calling me and asking for my help to resolve their problem. That same give and take that occurs. Again, it's surprising how much I actually was able to apply from The Art of War into customer service.
Well, and the other thing that I also kind of want to do with this expanding your horizons deal, especially with reading a book, is a lot of us don't actually realize this, or at least when we get that tunnel vision, we don't. But the works that we love are inspired by other things. And you might not know this, but you might actually like the inspirational work as well. I know friends who are absolutely the biggest fans of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time and are absolutely ecstatic that Wheel of Time is finally going to get an online TV series. Do you want to know what Robert Jordan's biggest inspiration was at the time when he wrote The Wheel of Time? Tolkien, or at least that was one of them. Tolkien was the inspiration. Do you know how many of these guys, believe it or not, had not read Tolkien? 2 or 3. So what did they decide to do while they were waiting for another Jordan book? Read Tolkien. Guess what? They're Tolkien fans. Sometimes you might actually end up a fan of something you didn't realize you would. Gamers in particular. If you're a fan of Hideo Kojima, do you know how much American film has inspired his career? Like, really? Do you know how much American film has inspired his career?
It was so much so that a Japanese DVD rental company actually was able to compile a full list of movies to distribute at a discount that were the inspiration for Metal Gear Solid. Like, this was like 20 different movies, and that's just a small fraction of the list because the guy's a huge cinephile.
Yep. I think even Anno has some American inspirations, doesn't he, Alex?
So, sorry, you kind of broke up for me. What did you say?
Hideaki Anno also has some American inspirations, doesn't he?
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
look at the Daikon animations, you kind of see that, yeah, there was I mean, especially Daikon 4, where they have like the different segments showing the different forms of geekdom. There's a fair bit that takes influence from Western works as well as anime. I mean, yeah, there was the segment that shows the American superheroes, but if you look in like some of the blink and you miss it moments, you'll see things like, oh, there's these ships from Thunderbirds, a British TV series that was really popular in Japan.
Yep. So that's kind of where I'm looking to aim for this. If you want to be able to expand your horizons via reading a book or really however, the first step that I would actually recommend is go to the creators you love and maybe look and see what their inspirations were. And then at that point, go watch the inspirations and see other things that were inspired by it. You might actually be able to expand yourself kind of to the point where I am, where I can't literally decide what kind of a geek I am on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I remember kind of hearing the same sort of thing way back. It was, I think, a few years ago. I was like senior year in high school, I believe. It was on Free Comic Book Day where Chris Claremont actually came to Utah. This wasn't like part of Salt Lake Comic Con, because Salt Lake Comic Con wasn't even a thing. It was just a case that Night Flight was hosting an event where they had Chris Claremont, which, for those of you who don't know, he's kind of one of the big writers of franchises like the X-Men and was kind of the architect of the Dark Phoenix saga. And he explained about his influences, where when people ask, oh, where does he get his ideas? And one of the first things he said was, okay, what if D'Artagnan didn't join the Three Musketeers? And he like posed these what ifs of all of these classic works of literature. And it's a case of, hey, that's where I get my ideas. I just think of what ifs in classic stories that I read growing up and kind of spin off from there.
I mean, for the only example that I can think of off the top of my head where there is a direct inspiration, if you're a fan of the early Spider-Man stuff drawn by Steve Ditko. Well, did you know that Steve Ditko, a lot of it, actually, no, he was a writer for that, I think. Because he created a lot of the characters right off the bat. Steve Ditko, being an objectionist, also was inspired by Ayn Rand. Who knows? If you like Steve Ditko, but you don't like anything else that's happened in Spider-Man, go check out Ayn Rand and see where you actually stand with it.
I mean, if you want a more recent example, BioShock, the very first BioShock.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect example.
Is very heavily inspired by the works of Ayn Rand, both The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. So if you want a recent example, that game literally is inspired by the works of Ayn Rand. So if you want to understand where the people at 2K were coming from with not just the first BioShock, but with kind of the entire franchise, that's their starting point. It was like literally a case of them asking, okay, what would happen if someone literally did create Galt's Gulch in the middle of the ocean? And then they basically went, okay, if someone actually did create it, what are the ramifications? And that is the germ of good ideas.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, this ought to give you at least something to be able to work with. Alex, is there anything you want to add to this before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think I really have much to add here.
Have we hit all the points for you?
Yeah.
We have a bad habit of doing that to Alex. We're trying to fix that.
Yeah.
we're trying to let him speak first so that he can then put that out and then he can perplex Romney. Romney would run with it. That's the way Romney is.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm open to the challenge of being perplexed because, again, I like being made to actually think about stuff. Because standing on a soapbox is kind of boring. That's why I let Adam do all the talking.
Yeah,
and then you let me get in all the trouble. That's all right. I'm usually in trouble. That's kind of my life. Anyway, we actually do need to wrap things up for the night because we are out of time. So we've covered a lot of content. If people want to be able to ask us on any of that content, any questions on, in particular, Reggie Fils-Aimé, all the YouTube stuff, if they want to reach out to us individually, as well as check out the YouTube content that you guys work so hard to be able to go and produce, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
You can find me on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel, and I do, of course, animated content. And if you always want to be blasted of when a brand new video goes up, follow me on social media at AlexJShort on Twitter. And I'm going to give my own recommendation here again tonight because Well, we had some Oscar discussion, and the Oscars are this weekend. So if you want a channel that is kind of dedicated to some Oscar history, I'm going to recommend you Be Kind, Rewind. If you like the prose style of Lindsay Ellis and want to see that applied to a lot of Oscar coverage, this channel, she mostly focuses on the history of different Best Actress, in particular, winners. That's mostly her focus. I don't know if she'll branch out at any time, but most of her content is around various Best Actress wins throughout the history of the Oscars. So that's my recommendation for this week.
All right. And Stephen Romney, how do people get a hold of your content as well as get in contact with you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on YouTube and on Facebook. I do upload to both when I actually have something to upload. I am also on Instagram under Romney Does Art, where I don't really do a lot of art. It's mostly pictures of food that I cook, random Nintendo video game tidbits, as well as pictures of my cat and the cats that live in my backyard, followed by more pictures of food and stuff that I just do at random. And I am also on Twitter, which is probably the best way to get a hold of me. It is at Romney Reviews. So if you want to send me suggestions, if you want to ask my opinion, this is the best way to do it. Seriously, Adam has 2 kids. Let's give the guy a break.
Well, and I actually am starting to send it to other people. I'm sending it to you guys now when I get it.
Yeah, because again, he is not the arbiter for both of us. You can go to us. We don't bite, not even if you ask us to, because we're not into that.
I like how one of our listeners put it. I'm not their agent because they're certainly not paying me like that.
No,
That's true.
And so, yeah, to reiterate, Studio Ghost Utah on YouTube and Facebook, Romney Does Art on Instagram, and Romney Reviews on Twitter. And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, one of my goals this year has been making sure that I have been getting enough sleep in a bid to improve my mental health, because it's easy to overlook the fact that getting enough sleep is really important for your mental well-being. And what has been helping me on this journey is an app called Pizziz. I'm not sure how else to pronounce it. It's very much a weird name. But what Pizziz is an app that basically has kind of guided meditations and guided breathing exercises, as well as just general sound stuff that's meant to help you sleep better. And although, speaking personally, it's been working for me in the sense that it's helped me establish a healthier routine of actually winding down, letting go of my thoughts of the day, and actually getting to sleep. And it's been making it much easier for me to actually go to sleep. So, although I don't know the science of the actual soundscape stuff of it, or the actual guided meditation stuff, the fact that it's become a major part of my routine has been greatly beneficial. It's helped me to lose weight, because it's also an important thing. Getting enough sleep helps you lose weight, and it's basically made it a lot easier for me to curb some of my more destructive impulses. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation, is the Pizziz app, available for Android and iOS devices.
All right. And the other thing I want to quickly advertise, because I just can't plug this enough. If you guys want to be able to see some other content that I actually do with these fine fellows, first of all, you can look up my second channel that I do with Alex called Drac and Shadow, where him and me tackle Let's Plays together along with my wife, Andrea. And I actually do recommend that for Geek News listeners as well, because sometimes when stories don't make the cut, they get talked about on Drac and Shadow. So if you're looking to have your particular story addressed and we weren't able to get it done, you can actually get it addressed there too. And there's also a lot of really great Let's Play content for you to enjoy. And then I also want to advertise that in case you guys didn't know, because the first episode literally happened last week and the next episode's due in a couple of days, me and Romney are officially up next on Gaming with the Geeks, as we are taking on the original Silent Hill. Will Drac actually poop his pants because he's so scared? It's entirely possible. The game is kind of freaky.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And you might actually even hear me and Romney talk about deep stuff, because that happens.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because it's deep. But if you guys want to be able to follow my content, well, obviously you're on my YouTube channel right now, so you can check out the Let's Play content that I do, as well as the podcast content that I do. I currently have reviews going, as well as Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories. I have Final Fantasy VIII, which just barely started, and also obviously Gaming with the Geeks, Silent Hill. So you guys have tons of content to be able to check out there. if you want to be able to follow the podcast directly, the first thing that we ask you guys do is follow and subscribe to the RSS feed, which is geekyweek.podomatic.com. You can also look up the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast, or to shorten it out, the GNRO podcast on iTunes and Google Play for Android users. And that's the best way to be able to support the RSS feed. If you want to be able to support us on social media, you can do so at Twitter and Facebook under the exact same tagline, Geeky NRO, and you'll be able to get up to that information when we're on the stories we might be covering, on when we're going to be able to go live. I even actually started tackling this on Twitter, where I'm going to bring up some other stories that maybe didn't necessarily get covered in the light, or get covered on the podcast, so you guys can enjoy that as well. And of course, if you guys want to leave feedback for the podcast, as well as any stories that you think we should cover, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for your continued love, support, and patience with the hard work that we're doing here. And again, I'm going to encourage everybody to go to the RSS feed, because there's actually content that's going on there that you don't necessarily know about that is pretty freaking awesome, and we're having a whole lot of fun doing it. So go check that out. In case people didn't get the inside joke at the beginning of the podcast, that's one of them. So we recommend that you guys do that as well. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So thank you guys so much. And we will be back, I believe, next week for even more Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. If not, I will let you guys know. So for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we will see you guys next time.